Yeah, like in general, I think the most reliable things that move the needle if you were deficient, what is, I don't know if people are familiar with the ZMA. It was like the first like combo supplement that was sort of seen as like a testosterone booster that was available on the market. And it's, like zinc, magnesium, and I don't remember if the A was something else, but vitamin D is the
Yeah.
third thing you want.
Right.
I don't remember what the A stands for, but those are the three things that move the needle most reliably that are natural. Otherwise would get through your diet, but likely not sufficiently. Maybe zinc you might, but like magnesium, pretty difficult, I would say, for a lot of people. They don't realize how deficient they are. And then even like supplementing accordingly, it's like, getting one that you tolerate well with your digestive system, has the yield that actually produces enough magnesium from like the elemental weight of the supplement, which is not that complicated. I don't want to make it sound super complicated. Like a lot of them are fine. Rhonda has great articles on magnesium formats that are bioavailable and yield more than enough magnesium. And yeah, the vitamin D, having an adequate amount, making sure you're converting it and actually getting the activity from it. Mechanistically, there is some level of like gene transcription capacity facilitated through these, like vitamin D is a hormone, for example, and it does also affect androgen receptor activity and some like the capacity for androgens to do what they do, not just like the production of the amount of them. So similar to what I talked about earlier, where you have this kind of like receptor interaction, how well can you actually utilize these hormones to do the things it needs to do in the body? Some of this is going to be facilitated by the adequate minerals and hormones through vitamin D supporting it. And it's not necessarily measurable as much, like directly, but all you can really do is like backfill accordingly to hit your needs and then assess your kind of like proxies and your blood work and your symptoms and kind of go from there.
In your opinion, like let's say someone is on the deficient range of vitamin D, they're inadequate magnesium, perhaps their zinc is, maybe okay or in the inadequate range. Would getting to that sufficient status really move the needle with respect to like testosterone?
I think if you were on the low end of the reference range or literally hypogonadal and you were clinically low or deficient for those, depending if it's all three or not, because obviously there'd be an additive effect.
Most of them are, I mean, at least vitamin D and magnesium, pretty common deficient.
Yeah, I would say like you're looking at probably a potential incremental difference of 100 to 150 total T maybe. It kind of depends on the person, of course. Like I've seen more robust response in some studies, but I also don't want to like over exaggerate the expectations. But it is meaningful. Like it's something that and some of it can't be directly measured either. Like we're talking about the total T number, but it's like, how do you know how much your deficient vitamin D is impacting your ability to like use it correctly? And then even if you had the sufficient vitamin D, the magnesium impact on all of that and the DNA interactions and whatnot, it's like, you'd be speculating at best. Right. So, and then there are some other more like tangential supplements that are not as like obvious no-brainers that are helpful. They're just facilitating mechanisms that are not like, this is a vitamin you need almost regardless of what your test levels were kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about those. I mean, you hear some of these herbal supplements and like some of the ashwagandha, fenugreek with Tongkat Ali. I mean, let's dive into that. Like, are they effective? Which ones are effective? Which ones are hype?
Yeah. I think one that I would be worth mentioning, but the literature isn't super robust. It is boron, so that potentially has a suppressive effect on SHBG levels. There's some literature that looks promising, but I wouldn't hang my hat on and say it's a guarantee it's going to suppress your SHBG from like the high end of the reference range to something that's like much more, much better, but like it does seem to work for some people. And in general, it can be a supporting adjunct that some people it's not something you typically get through your diet in like significant quantities anyways. Like often people it'll come into multivitamin typically, but the quantity that moves the needle for SHBG, I believe was like 6 to 12 milligrams and can be meaningful for actually liberating free testosterone, not for actually producing more total T. The other one that's probably worth mentioning, ashwagandha, specifically, extract that is standardized to a sufficient quantity of withanolides, and not just your standard run-of-the-mill generic ashwagandha. You want to look for ideally a patented, Sensoril or a KSM 66. These are patented formats of ashwagandha that are standardized to a target yield. So you know that what you're getting is what you're supposed to be getting, rather than relying on, certificates of analysis from China of a generic extract. So I would.
What was that compound they're standardized to again?
Withanolides.
Okay.
It's like it'll show right on the label. It'll be like ashwagandha bracket standardized to X percentage of withanolides. And depending on if you have KSM 66, that's 5%, Sensoril is 10%. The difference between why you would pick one or the other is the actual total dose. You could get away with using less milligrams of the Sensoril because it has more withanolides per milligram inclusion in your product. But they're both
and is
impactful.
That the active compound that affects testosterone?
Yeah, it seems to be. And when I say testosterone,
clarify.
It's like the indirect effect via suppressing cortisol, seemingly, and kind of like the stress response manipulations that it can induce, which are favorable for people who are anxious, who have very stressful lifestyles, who could benefit from it. But it is not a catch-all supplement that will benefit everyone. And some people, it will push them into anhedonia territory, which is like a numbing of emotion. So you don't want to.
Really?
Yeah. If you overdo it, it will literally suppress your stress response so significantly that everything's just black and white.
What's a dose that would maybe be effective for suppressing the cortisol response and indirectly affecting testosterone by not having the cortisol decreasing the testosterone?
I would go with the clinically supported dose for something that's efficacious. I wouldn't necessarily suggest somebody, take something that's lower than what I've seen to actually work. But in general, it seems to be a cumulative effect over time. Maybe there are some people who it might push you over the edge sooner, and certainly it's something to be cautious of and be aware of as a disclaimer before you jump on any testosterone augmenting supplements. Just be aware of the mechanism of how it works based on your own individual biochemistry, because this is not something like a vitamin D that you can just sequester into sub-Q fat and just get rid of at some point. It's it could impact your mood regulation quite significantly for a bit, depending on what your neurotransmitter balance is at baseline. If you are already borderline emotionally numb as a person and you take ashwagandha, you might literally cease to care about anything, for all I know.
That sounds awful.
Yeah.
But I mean, for someone who is more of an anxious phenotype,
600 milligrams.
600 milligrams.
I think is the dose, but double check on that because I might be misremembering. But
right.
I'm pretty sure. And that is impactful to the tune of upwards of another 100 points, seemingly. I could be misremembering exactly, but it's I think it's triple digits pretty reliably for those who can benefit from it. And for some people, it's a game changer supplement that really improves their quality of life outside of just the testosterone enhancing capacity of it. Because some people deal with a lot of stress in their life and need that extra resilience or suppression of how much it's affecting their mental state. Some people, they can't even get to sleep because they're ruminating and they're constantly anxious, and having that kind of suppressed stress response can be very, very net beneficial. And then on top of that, improves their sleep and also improves their testosterone through the reduction of the kind of glucocorticoid responses. And yeah, so it works for sure. The literature seems sound on it. Some of it is funded by some of these companies that do have the patented extracts, so just be aware of that. But at least from what I've seen in blood work anecdotally too, it seems to work. Tongkat Ali, another very notable one. This is one that works through a different mechanism. It seems to be a bit more speculative how it works, but it seems to do a few things potentially. One being minor SERM activity potentially, and this is more speculative. SERM is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, so something that binds to estrogen receptors and either positively or negatively modulates them in selective tissues. So there are certain tissues where it would be more favorable to have a selective inhibition of certain hormones versus others that would be detrimental. You wouldn't want to inhibit estrogen's activity in bone, for example, because that would cause bone degradation. Having an inhibition at the hypothalamus level may, depending on the person, help increase testosterone via the inhibition of that feedback loop. Now, I don't necessarily think it is a SERM. That's just like the tertiary potential mechanism, and it is speculative. The main mechanism that people seem to agree on that it does do, suppression of SHBG to some extent, as well as the upregulation of steroidogenesis intratesticularly. So like locally upregulating, I believe it's steroidogenic acute regulatory protein that basically incorporates cholesterol into the mitochondria to actually undergo these enzymatic cleaving sequences that result in the production of testosterone locally. So it seems to like help upregulate the process that actually enzymatically spits out testosterone essentially locally. So that one seems to work well for individuals who have high SHBG levels or potentially higher estrogen levels than they, is otherwise fixable via basic lifestyle changes and whatnot. Because everyone has their own proportion of metabolism at the end of the day. It's not always going to be optimal, even if you have what is otherwise like a great diet and lifestyle. But also it's just like, I think it's for people who have adequate, everything looks on paper to be sufficient, but their SHBG might be a bit high, or they could use a little bit of a boost. And it seems to work to the tune of 100 to 200 nanograms per deciliter for some people. And it depends on how potent of a standardized extract you get. You want to look for one that is HPLC tested for urecominone. That's the active ingredient in Tongkat Ali that actually has the bioactive effect that you're looking for. There are a lot of Tongkat Ali supplements that just say Tongkat Ali, or it'll say Tongkat Ali like 100 to 1 or like 10 to 1 or whatever. Like these are kind of meaningless numbers from what I understand. Like you're not going to get a 200 to 1 version of a Tongkat. And even if you did, there's no indication there's any urecominone in it. So similar to the ashwagandha, you want something that actually says this is how much of the literal ingredient that does what you're looking to get out of it in it. And here's a third party test to verify it. So,
and what was that ingredient called again?
Urecominone.
Got it.
So
your top 4 supplements for testosterone would be
zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, not in order, just the top 3, I would say. And then I guess for impact, I would probably say like Tongkat Ali, but probably boron would be my safer next choice just for like safety profile.